a horse and rider, a fence 1 meter 60 high and 2 meters wide. The horse is traveling at 30 kilometers per hour. They must clear this and 17 others like it without touching a rail. If a rail falls, 4 penalty points. If the horse refuses, elimination. This is show jumping, an Olympic sport watched by 400 million people worldwide. And it began, improbably, almost impossibly, with English aristocrats chasing a fox across the countryside. This is how it happened. To understand show jumping, you must first understand something that happened to the English landscape before the sport existed. In the 18th and early 19th centuries, the British Parliament passed a series of laws known as the Enclosure Acts. These laws transformed the countryside, dividing open fields and common land into privately owned parcels, each one bounded by hedgerows, stone walls, post and rail fences. For the English aristocracy, this newly partitioned landscape created a problem. Fox hunting, the defining rural pursuit of the landed gentry, required riders to follow hounds across the countryside at speed. Riders who once galloped across open fields now found themselves confronting a relentless obstacle course of fences, ditches, and hedges. The horses that could clear these obstacles, cleanly, boldly, without hesitation, became prized above all others. The Enclosure Acts did not create show jumping, but they created the condition that made it inevitable, a landscape that rewarded the horse who could fly. Fox hunting was never about jumping. It was about the chase, the hounds, the scent, the ritual. But the fences were inescapable, and the riders who could clear them with the most style and the least disruption to the hunt became the unofficial aristocracy of the field. After the hunt, at the great country houses of England and Ireland, conversation inevitably turned to comparison. Which horse jumped cleanest? Which rider sat most elegantly over a hedge? These informal post-hunt discussions became informal post-hunt competitions. A few fences set up in a field, a wager between gentlemen, a test of nerve and horsemanship. By the 1860s, the competitions had acquired a name: lepping competitions, from the Anglo-Saxon word for jump. They were held at agricultural shows alongside livestock judging and produce displays. The fences were modest, perhaps 3 feet high, and the criteria were simple: jump clean or be eliminated. The sport had been born, though nobody yet called it a sport. It was still, in the minds of its participants, simply what one did after the hunt was over. Show jumping's journey from pasture to Olympic arena is one of the most extraordinary evolutions in the history of sport. It begins in the 1750s, when the Enclosure Acts begin reshaping the English countryside. By the 1860s, informal jumping competitions called lepping events appear at agricultural fairs in Ireland and England. In 1869, the Dublin Horse Show hosts the first recorded formal jumping competition under fixed rules. Then, in 1900, something unthinkable happens. Show jumping is included in the second modern Olympic Games in Paris. A discipline born on English country estates, perfected by Italian cavalry officers and embraced by European royalty. Now, a global sport. The arc from hedgerow to Olympic Stadium spans less than a century and a half. But behind that arc is a cast of characters, kings, cavalrymen, and one Italian visionary who transformed a country pursuit into an art form. The most important figure in the history of show jumping is not a rider, though he was one. It is an Italian cavalry officer named Federico Caprilli, born in Livorno in 1868. And what he did changed not just show jumping, but the entire relationship between human beings and horses. Before Caprilli, riders leaned back when jumping, a position that seemed logical but was actually catastrophic for the horse. It pulled on the animal's mouth at the exact moment it needed its head for balance. It interfered with the horse's center of gravity. It turned every jump into a negotiation between the rider's fear and the horse's instinct. Caprilli proposed something radical. The rider should lean forward, following the horse's motion, placing their weight over the horse's center of balance, giving the animal its head at the moment of takeoff. The forward seat, as it became known, was initially rejected by the cavalry establishment as undignified, but the results were undeniable. Horses ridden in the Caprilli system jumped higher, cleared fences more cleanly, and, crucially, were injured far less often. By 1900, Caprilli's method had spread from the Italian cavalry to the riding schools of Europe. Show jumping as a true competitive discipline was now possible. The 1900 Olympic Games in Paris were a strange and chaotic affair, spread across 5 months, attached as a sideshow to the World's Fair, with many athletes not knowing they were competing in the Olympics at all. But within that chaos, a milestone was set. For the first time, horses and riders competed for Olympic medals. The show jumping competition took place on May 29th at the Place de Breteuil. Riders from Belgium, France, and Italy competed over a course of obstacles that would seem primitive today, mostly vertical fences without the technical combinations that define modern courses. A Belgian rider named Aimé Hageman won the gold aboard his horse, Benton II. Equestrian events disappeared from the Olympics in 1904 and 1908. The logistics of transporting horses across oceans was too much for early Olympic organizers. But in 1912, at the Stockholm Games, equestrian sport returned permanently, and this time it arrived with the structure it retains to this day: individual show jumping, individual dressage, individual eventing, and team competitions in all 3 disciplines. The fox hunter's pastime was now an Olympic institution. In 1921, in Lausanne, Switzerland, the city that would later become the Olympic capital, a group of national equestrian federations gathered to form the Fédération Équestre Internationale. The FEI established the first unified rulebook for international jumping competitions. The sport now had a global governing body, a standard course design, and a ranking system. The same year, the first international team competition was held, the Nations Cup, in which riders representing their countries compete as a team. It remains the most prestigious team prize in show jumping, second only to the Olympic team gold. The informal wager between gentlemen had become a contest between nations. No sport in the modern Olympic program has a deeper connection to royalty than equestrian sport, and no monarchy has a deeper connection to show jumping than the British royal family. Queen Elizabeth II was a passionate rider from childhood, given her first pony at age 4, and remained in the saddle into her 90s. Her daughter, Princess Anne, competed in the 1976 European Eventing Championships and became the first member of the British royal family to compete in the Olympic Games. Her granddaughter, Zara Tindall, won a silver medal in eventing at the 2012 London Olympics. But the royal connection extends far beyond Britain. King Gustav V of Sweden presided over the 1912 Stockholm Games that made equestrian sport permanent. King Abdullah II of Jordan is an accomplished show jumper. Princess Haya bint Al Hussein of Jordan competed at the 2000 Sydney Olympics. Charlotte Casiraghi of Monaco, granddaughter of Grace Kelly, is a competitive show jumper in the Global Champions Tour. The sport's aristocracy is not metaphorical, it is literal. An unbroken line of royal riders stretching back more than a century. The Olympic show jumping gold medal. It has been won by riders from every continent. It has been worn by cavalry officers and civilians, by men and women. Show jumping is the only Olympic sport where men and women compete directly against each other in the same event. The medal itself is not merely a sporting prize. It is the culmination of an unbroken chain. From the hedgerows of 18th century England, through the cavalry schools of Caprilli's Italy, through the First Nations Cup, to the global Grand Prix circuit, watched by millions. The medal is not just gold. It is history, shaped into a disc. What does a show-jumping horse cost? At the entry level, a young horse with potential but no competition record, between $10,000 and $50,000. At the intermediate level, a horse with some national competition experience, $100,000 to $300,000. At the elite level, a Grand Prix horse with proven international success, prices routinely exceed $1 million. Some have sold for more than $10 million. And then, the annual costs begin. Training and boarding at a professional stable, $30,000 to $60,000 per year. Veterinary care, farrier, chiropractic, and supplements, $20,000 to $30,000 annually. Transport to competitions across continents, $40,000 to $100,000. A full season of Grand Prix show jumping, horse, stabling, transport, entry fees, coaching, insurance, can exceed $300,000. The horse is not a pet. It is not even an athlete in the ordinary sense. It is a partner, a living creature whose instincts, training, and trust must be in perfect alignment with the rider's judgment at every moment of every round. No other sport depends on such a profound partnership between two species, and no partnership in sport costs more to sustain. 250 years ago, on a damp English morning, a rider on a hunting horse faced a hedgerow and decided, for reasons that had nothing to do with necessity and everything to do with something we might call pride or spirit, or the simple refusal to go around an obstacle when you could go over it, to jump. That decision, repeated thousands of times by thousands of riders across 2.5 centuries, has become what we now watch in packed stadiums and on television screens across the world. The obstacles are higher now, the stakes are immeasurably greater. The partnership between horse and rider has been refined by generations of horsemen and women, from Caprilli's forward seat to the modern biomechanics of equine training. But the essence of the thing has not changed. It is still, as it was in 1750, a horse and a rider and an obstacle. And the question is the same one the fox hunter asked at the hedgerow. Can we clear this? The answer, when it is yes, is one of the most beautiful things in sport. Show jumping began with a hedge and a horse and a rider who refused to go around. 2.5 centuries later, it is an Olympic discipline, a global industry, and, at its highest level, one of the most extraordinary partnerships between two species that has ever existed. We have walked through the Enclosure acts, the fox hunts, the cavalry schools of Italy, the royal stables of Europe, the first Olympic competition in Paris, the founding of the FEI, and the multi-million-dollar Grand Prix circuit that exists today. The fences are higher, the lights are brighter. But the heart of the thing, a rider asking a horse to fly, has never changed. Next time, we return to the water, to the cost of owning what the Royal Yacht Squadron's members keep anchored in the Solent.